Hey folks, it's us, podcasting wonderkins John Bishop and Lucas Southworth.
Although this is a podcast about cars, it is not age appropriate for the target demographic of these films, as we usually end up talking about the reproductive organs of Lightning McQueen.
Alright, now let's take a look under the hood.
When a mysterious movie crashes into a lowly, derelict theater, fans take on podcaster-like life. The chat sucks the fun from innocent movies to fuel their need for content and drain the planet of all its fuel. Only two non-teenagers transformed by the movie stand between the audience and a world not brave enough to ask the question, "Hey, what's up with cars?"
Man, Johnny, I was, when you said, I've got the intro, I expected it to be, pretty good, but that was pretty good, man.
So, why did I say all of that, Lucas?
First off, I'm Lucas, he's John. We do the chat. But that's this that you're listening to. You get it.
Right now.
He said all that because it is, of course, Spookoween, and for that, we thought we'd do something a little different, a little special, and we watched a show that I'm sure almost none of you know anything about, called Van-pires.
A show I hope none of you know anything about until now. Alright, so, is this show, do you want to give a basic rundown of anything about it? Because I got some stuff to say, but I want to see your thoughts and feelings first.
First, I'll give a basic rundown of it. It was a kids, maybe more geared toward teens, since the characters in the show are teens. But it's a show that ran for 13 episodes in the late 90s. I want to say 97 off the top of my head. About 4 teens who hang out in a junkyard, and a magic meteor crashes and brings some cars to life as van-pires. You see the connection now to our show that we do. But also gives them the powers to transform into vampires, and they fight them, and one of them, the big one's named Dracula. And that's the long and short of it, would you say, Johnny?
Yep. I got so many questions, so many statements. Let's just talk about one interesting little thing. This clearly is supposed to be Power Rangers, right? This is supposed to be Power Rangers. Okay, so why did they do all of these things? Why?
Yeah. First, one thing about Van-pires you gotta know, it is filled with what is admittedly very early CG, but some of the worst CG graphics I have seen in my lifetime. You just have to know that before we go any further.
It's so bad.
Yes, John is right. Yeah. It follows sort of the formula of Power Rangers, and that it's some teens who transform to fight a villain of the week. But it also seems to be trying a little bit to go off the back of Transformers, a little bit.
I could see that.
But I would say, I'd say Power Rangers is the more direct comparison.
So,
I don't know, man. It's a very bad show. It's a very bad show that I've seen all of now.
So, we like to make puns on this podcast. What would you say the ratio of puns to not puns in the show is? By not puns, I mean any words that were said that were not in any way connected to a pun.
It seemed like at least once per sentence, if not more, there was a car pun of some sort. They weren't good, but they were there.
You say a pun related to cars, but one of the main characters is named Van Helsing.
Yeah, he certainly is named that.
His pun is about Van Helsing, which, okay, so vampires okay in cars, but there's nothing to do with cars in Helsing.
They did explain why he was named that in the first episode, if you caught it.
It's a very big featured part of the episode.
No, they directly say it, but like I gotta say, there are almost certainly things they directly state in this show that my eyes were too glazed over to notice. But
So, let's before we talk any more about the show, go ahead and give me your rating.
Lord in heaven, honestly, John, I cannot justify giving it above a 1 out of 10. Like, I am a person who is known. I am known amongst my friends a little bit for really enjoying bad movies. You know, I'm very into like Troll 2, and the B movie is something I find fantastic. One of my genuine, like, it's because it's bad and fun to watch, but genuinely one of my favorite Batman movies is Batman and Robin with George Clooney. And
I've got something to say about that, so I'll let you go on first.
yeah, it's because it's bad and campy, but we'll get into it. I really enjoy watching things that are so bad they're good. This is not so bad it's good. It's just bad. And maybe if I was in a big group of people just watching it and having fun, but just watching it by myself was a bit of a chore. And it was just bad, and it looked bad, and the lines were bad, and the characters were bad. And I liked Van Helsing a little bit. He was kind of weird.
You liked Van Helsing?
He was weird.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he was very weird.
At least he was a little interesting from time to time.
He was a character that they gave all of the positivity and good attributes to, but they also gave him some negative ones, and they didn't shy away from that.
He was a weird hippie man. He was a weird hippie man who lived in a hollowed out junk pile, as far as I could tell.
Which brings me to the quote from Wikipedia of the day.
You don't get to do that.
But I got one.
Is it from Wikipedia itself?
Yep.
Okay. This brings me to the I'm stealing the wiki quote from John segment, because I think we have the same one. This is, of course, on ian.wikipedia.org/wiki/van-pires. Under the Allies section, you see...
Oh, you got it.
Yeah, I mean, it's the one that you do.
Yep.
It's under Van Helsing, right next to it, in parentheses, it says, like, you know how in parentheses it'll always say, like, this is the actor who played this. For that little section of him, it says, unknown, as the character is credited as playing himself. Which is true. I did notice that in my watching.
I was very confused.
In the opening credit sequence, it would go through and be like, Snap, played by this person. Rev, played by this young woman. And then it would say, and Van Helsing as himself. So is
that a person? Is Van Helsing like an actual person who sang with Van Halen?
There's no way.
Spoiler alert. That's why he's named Van Helsing, is because the lead singer of Van Halen was sick, I think, and he couldn't sing, so someone was like, oh, what about Van? He'll sing.
Yep. And while we're here, real quick, I don't know if you noticed this, but Dracula is voiced by Jonathan Davis, who is
I was very curious as to why that voice was super familiar.
He is much more better known as the lead vocalist for the band Korn.
Yeah.
As the lead singer of Korn, voices the antagonist in this very terrible children's show from the late 90s. So that's something.
It's something, all right.
Yeah.
Just like this show.
Yeah.
All right. Do you want to hear my rating?
I gave my rating. It's a 1. What's your rating?
All right. My rating is a quantum rating. I think this show is both a 2 and a 10.
Okay.
Because I think that there is a chance, a very, very small chance, that every single person working on this project was doing everything as this weird, genuine version of hyper-ironic cynicism. I think that every single part of the show could be a critique of every part of that kind of show. They took everything and dialed it way up. all of the campy acting was even more campy. All of the dialogue was even more punny and dumb, and like every single message was somehow more like absurdly direct and also completely confusing and nonsensical. Everything about this show is everything about it is just too much, which leads me to believe that instead of just being a terrible show, this show might be one of the most artistically like coherent and absurdly like well-crafted pieces I have ever seen of just scathing satire.
John, I feel you are talking as I imagine people who have Stockholm syndrome are talk after they are rescued.
Lucas, you didn't watch it right. You gotta watch it in the right way. Every
But
time it hurts, it's doing its job. You have to watch it at like 1.75 speed.
well, yeah, I yeah. Uh, but like the way you spoke was like it can't have been this bad. I can't have spent 13 separate 24-minute viewing sessions of my life on something this bad, so it has to have been genius.
See, that's a way you could interpret this, or you could interpret it as every single thing about this had to be intentionally bad for everything to be this bad. Like, you've seen bad
Um,
things. You've seen movies that are just like, "Oh, well, that wasn't well done or well executed or well planned." But it seems like every single part of the show was designed to be too much and bad.
I I
It's
I
something.
I want to I want to comment on that real quick. I understand what you're saying, and actually, that's something that like going back to Batman and Robin. Actually, real quick, that's the way I prefer to watch Batman and Robin. It is so over the top that it feels like a Batman parody movie. Like he pulls out the Bat credit card, and that would be so at home in a purposeful Batman parody. Mr. Freeze directs a rendition of I'm Mr. Cold Miser from, I think it's The Year Without a Santa Claus. And like that is so on the nose parody. Like that's why I like Batman and Robin, because it's so silly that, and like these are intended to be jokes, but they're also intended to be in like a quasi serious Batman movie, and that's very funny to me.
But that's the thing. I think that specific Batman film is actually a good film for what it was supposed to be, just not what people wanted it to be. People didn't want this
Yeah,
insanely campy, funny movie that was a little bit of action with like Batman on top of it. I think as this like very funny, comical, campy, cheesy movie, it's great. But this show,
yeah,
it's I'm not claiming that it is very good at what it's supposed to be. I'm saying that it has to be intentionally too much of what it's supposed to be in every single way. It again, they
yeah,
just took everything and cranked it way up.
yeah. I can see what you're saying in that it does seem intentionally over the top, but that does not result in it being a good show, even if it is on
Lucas,
purpose.
that's what I'm saying. It's not a
Okay,
good show because it's not
you called it a
supposed to
10.
be a good show. It's a 10 because it is what the world needed. It is a scathing criticism. It is a painful show to watch because it's pointing out all of the bad things about an entire genre. It makes you sit through the most extreme bad. It's not so bad it's good, it's so bad because it's supposed to be bad. And it's so good at being bad.
I think this is a very fun way to look at the show. I think almost fairly obviously that was not what they were trying to do.
No, yeah,
With
it's probably just a terrible, terrible show.
yeah, but it's fun to think about it that way. We should talk about the show a little bit. We've
Yeah, yeah. Oh, all that being said, I would be on a show like this in a heartbeat.
I mean, honestly, why not? At least at our current level, if I was a big name actor, I would not. But if they just asked me, Lucas Southworth, random person, I'd be like, you know what? Sure, why not?
I feel like even if I were like a big name actor, I'd probably do this kind of show just so I could have that Nick Cage hyper theatrical nature to me of like one thing where you can watch me and I'm just nuts.
That's
All right,
fair.
let's talk about the show. Who's your
Yes,
favorite character? Because my favorite character, you don't have one. They're all terrible.
they're all pretty bad. If I had to pick one, again, it would be Van Helsing.
Van Helsing. All right.
I would. One thing I gotta say about Van, at least the teenagers get to transform into their grotesque CG vampire forms. Van has to
Mm-hmm.
stay on screen and try his best to act for the entirety of the show. And I gotta at least give him
Yeah.
that he is there attempting to act for the whole episode each time, And that's why I
Yeah.
like Van. At least more than the rest of these children.
All right. I've got my favorite character. It's Automaniac.
Oh, Automaniac. Automaniac is one of the henchmen of Dracula. There's Dracula, who's the big bad.
Karmada, if you will.
Sure, they also called them the Track Pack or the Fang Gang from time to time, which, sure. Uh, but he has three henchmen. They're Cardaver, who is a hearse, Ambula, who is an ambulance, and Automaniac, who is a clown, who is an ice cream truck. They're all pretty bad, as are all of the characters in the show. Automaniac does cause a worldwide ice age for a while.
All it takes is some real good fuel, which he drinks rocket fuel and can freeze the entire world. I'm gonna go ahead and say he's probably the most powerful character.
I mean,
There's also Alucard, who is the son of Dracula, who is supposed like in the very first episode, there is a prophecy of, hey, you don't need to be as worried about Dracula, you need to be worried about Dracula's son. And it's no, you don't, because he's in half of one episode and he's like real sad because it's just like, wait a minute, I was just born, I'm thirsty for fuel. I'm going to hurt people because someone told me to. Oh, look, a puppy. And then he dies.
yeah, real quick, we should note that the vampires drink fuel from cars and not blood. I don't think we said that.
I don't think we described how any of this really works. There was
We don't know
a
how it
magic
works.
comet, and
Yes.
then vampires happened, but also some teenagers were fused with, but not actually fused with, their cars, and they can transform at will unless they can't. There are weird arbitrary times where they can just transform, drive to a place, transform back, and not worry about it. But other times they need to get to their vehicle, which
Yeah,
okay.
the cars that they were in when they were transformed are called their carfins, which of course is portmanteau of car and coffin, because why wouldn't it be? And it is said a few times, like it's a big crunch that like Rev is trapped somewhere and like, oh no, she needs to transform back, but she needs her carfin to do so. And then like, I don't know, other times they're just like, oh, let's transform so we can get to this concert on time, and then transform back and enjoy the concert, even though our carfins aren't here.
Yep, they just happened. Like, and they made a point to be like, oh, we have to get the thing to the person in a later episode, so it's like they only broke the rules when it was intentionally unimportant to do so. You know, as if this show was intentional and beautifully made.
I'm not there yet, but
Okay, so 4 teenagers turn into cars.
yes, their names are, and as far as we know, these are their legal names. They are, because they never at any point state any other name for them. They are Axel, Snap, Nuke, and Rev, which, again, these are what the characters call each other before the events of the show in which they are transformed into vampires. I guess they're nicknames, or I don't know. They're just their names. I don't care. They're their names, sure.
Yeah, I guess. So, what did you think of these teenagers? If you had to guess, how old do you think all of these teenagers were?
Well, in the canon of the show, they were 15 because they couldn't drive yet, which was hilarious to me, actually.
Which brings me to my fun fact of the day.
Sure.
Did you know Bryan Cranston played a character in Power Rangers?
I didn't. I didn't watch Power Rangers when I was a kid. That was much more your thing.
You want to guess what his character's name was?
Cryin' Branston.
It was Snizzard.
Ah. That explains
You know,
a few things.
Snizzard.
Sure.
You see, I didn't have a good transition for that one, and then I thought about it, and I was like, we're never actually going to have a good transition
No, you're
for
not
that
going to
one.
get the transition to that. Why
Nope.
would you?
So I just went for it. All right. So the allies: Van Helsing, Gypsy, and Grease Spot.
Yep. Grease Spot is a tricycle. He drives a truck at some point in the show. He does drive a truck, and he's a tricycle. And, like, the Van-pires get, like, arms, but Grease Spot's just a tricycle with eyes, and he does drive a truck at one point in the show.
Grease Spot is a puppy. That's it. Grease Spot's just like their dog, except there was no dog beforehand, so it's not like fused with a dog. And also, Grease Spot doesn't like seem to express any thirst for fuel because tricycle, I guess. And also,
I think he can be out in the sun.
yeah, which also
Which-
for some reason the vampires and also the teenagers who have a lot of like vampire tendencies, they just turn to rust in the sun
And in the rain.
and in the rain.
Yeah. Also,
I can get the rain. I can't get. Why would you turn to rust just by being in the sun?
I mean, they're vampires still, and that's like a weakness of vampires sometimes.
Is rain?
Running water is a lot of the times. I'm not sure about rain, so maybe that was just like
They can't cross running water.
so maybe that was just a way they adapted like some sort of water weakness. But also, Rev, the girl motivator, they call themselves the motivators. The girl motivator is a fire truck, and she sprays them with a fire hose a lot, and it doesn't like dissolve them, so it's not water. I think it's just rain.
That's so weird and specific. It's almost like they're intentionally pointing out something that is an incongruity that, like, if they were to have been doing that so intentionally, would be beautiful in its terribleness.
The first time they did it, they weren't like, oh no, rain, our weakness. It just started raining, and they're like, oh gosh, what's happening? It burns. So I thought it was acid rain. Like, and they just weren't.
Which, in this world, it very well could be.
Yeah.
Because this world is just, everything is fuel.
Yeah. And every setting that isn't a cemetery, the junkyard, or like the one other place they go and are live action for the show is computer generated and looks dark and spooky.
Yeah, and it's weird because sometimes they will mix like real world scenery with the CG, and it's just like, oh, we're gonna have a live action shot, and then we're gonna have a big shadow, and then we're gonna go over to the CG monster who is creating the shadow, and then they'll like blend those two together, and it gets super weird looking because they use CG so much.
Yeah, let me tell you, folks.
Have you seen the show Butt Ugly Martians?
I've heard of it. I don't know anything about it.
Somehow this show looks worse than that show, and that show intentionally made the characters hideous.
Yeah, it's no Toy Story, I'll tell you that. Like, even we have talked about...
Have you seen the first Toy Story recently, though?
I know.
It's kind of terrifying.
I know. We have talked about that on the show. I disagree with you mostly, because, like, obviously the recent advances in computer-generated animation look a lot better, but I don't know. It looks fine to me. But this looks terrible. It just looks ugly and awful. All the explosions are that, like, very early CG explosion where everything is in, like, weird shards, like polygonal shards. I don't know. It's a bad show that we watch.
Yeah.
We do a lot for you all, huh?
So much. We've sacrificed so much for you guys. All right, so what is the motivation of the motivators?
Well, again, they're 4 teenagers who hang out in a junkyard most of the time, who I think Van employs as mechanics technically, but I don't think that's literally ever stated. It's just an assumption we're supposed to make about these 4 teenagers and the work they do on cars throughout the series. But I think they just want to be teenagers and beat up Dracula and his goons is like the beginning and end of their motivation, and like have cars. But again, they can't drive. They're 15, and they make a point of pointing that out several times. But getting into the flashbacks in like the ninth, it's the episode with Alucard. I think it's the 9th episode
where Alucard dies. Yes, that sounds right, because the 10th episode is the one with the ending that doesn't make any sense.
They do this. I think they just didn't film enough to fill the 24-minute time slot. They do. I think I timed a 3-minute montage of like, oh look, we're such great friends, but like we haven't seen many of these scenes yet. Like it showed scenes from upcoming episodes in which they give a present to a child, and Rev is like, I don't know, just standing around laughing. That I was like, I have watched all of this within this week. We don't know what's happening here. And it's also wasn't the last episode. I looked it up. It wasn't the last episode they filmed or made. So all I can think is they're like...
Was the 10th one the last episode they filmed? Because that would make sense to me.
Which one was the 10th one, man? I can't.
The one that had a season finale ending of, oh look, all of them are coming back to life and possessing other vehicles, and now the army will go, and then it ends, and that's it. And then the next episode, they're just doing something else.
Oh, yeah, I remember one of them had a cliffhanger that they didn't expound upon, but, like, I don't know, it didn't surprise me. So I was like, okay, sure. So I didn't pay much attention to it. But, yeah,
okay,
I don't know. John, want to know something about this show that just pissed me off a little bit?
Yes.
The Van-pires, and, in fact, the motivators, can all fly.
Yep. They have wings and can fly for
and therefore
reasons
almost never use their wheels. They're car vampires. That's the concept of the show, is what if cars were also vampires and teenagers?
Mm-hmm.
That is it in a sentence. But they don't... They could have just been mechanical vampires and nothing would change.
But then you can't say vampires.
Yeah, and I will say, I told Johnny this before the show started, and I did just do it, I noticed. I think the biggest thing that this show is going to leave me with, I've been noticing it throughout the week when I have just, in my day-to-day life needed to talk about vampires. I accidentally say Van-pires instead because it's close enough. And, like, it's close enough that, like when I say it to Liz, she doesn't catch it. But I catch it, and it makes me internally very angry for a second that this show has ruined a word in my vocabulary.
Especially seeing how it's
foreseeable future.
It's spooky season, so vampires will be coming up a lot.
And Dracula is like an alien car vampire.
Is he, though?
What?
Like, that comet comes down. Does it transform just vehicles in that junkyard into vampires and not vampires? Or is the comet carrying him?
He does say, like, the people of this planet a lot. I don't think he wasn't inside the meteor. I think maybe, like, he was some sort of, I don't know, germ or bacteria or programming or something that was carried by the meteor that, like, inhabited a car, is how I was trying to make sense of this show's lore, since they certainly didn't do any of it for me.
But, like, for sure, they say something along the lines of, he has been around for a while and has been betrayed by Earth's people before?
They do? I didn't catch that.
It's so weird. Yeah, he was, like, cast out from society for some reason, and I don't understand any of it.
Yeah, it's a bad show, John.
for some reason, specifically all of these cars were possessed by, like, their airbags?
Yeah, I looked away for a minute and like looked back, and there was just like a blob swallowing Rev, and I was like, okay,
Yep.
I don't know what that is, but sure, it was. And then it was revealed later that it was the airbags of the cars. I guess.
Yeah, it's great.
Axel
Okay.
fully drops an engine on Snap at one point in this show. Goes into a depressive episode about
Yeah, well, here's the thing. He doesn't drop it. A link in the chain breaks in some sort of freak accident that no one could have predicted, and then the engine falls onto Snap, and Snap sprains his ankle,
yeah.
which is not a problem at any point in the episode.
Oh yeah, it's never made an issue. But I will say
He becomes the van and is fine.
Yeah, they come in and they're like, Axel, that's not enough to hold this engine. It's not safe. So like he still does blame himself for, I don't know, fairly reasonable reasons, but then the whole time, even as Axel is like, no, my ankle's like pretty much fine. He's like, how can you ever trust me to be your leader again? And literally all three of them are like, Axel, it's literally fine. Snap is,
and then instead of just
hurt.
saying someone else should be a leader, he just abandons them.
He just leaves. Yeah, I just
he doesn't
like that up.
Just give up leadership. He just gives up on everything.
Just gives up.
Which okay, but like, also the thing that was unsafe is that it was like two dudes just holding an engine. Like, the chain shouldn't have been the problem. What should have been the problem is that they were just pulling on the chain. They shouldn't have been strong enough to just hold the chain.
Okay.
So the thing that happened was the chain broke, which shouldn't have happened. That shouldn't have been a thing. And also, he shouldn't just be like standing underneath that. If it were to fall, which it shouldn't have for the reason it did, it should have fallen because they were just holding it up. Like, everything about this was people making bad choices. But like, the thing that went wrong wasn't anybody's bad choice per se.
Yeah. It's a pretty bad show, John.
So let's talk about the team dynamics. Axel is the leader because straight white man.
He's the tallest of the white men. I don't know. Nuke.
He's not.
Nuke's taller than it.
Nuke is
he's the
tallest.
most attractive of the white men.
But he's the most attractive of the white men. Snap, he's not white, so I guess he can't be the leader. Nuke is tall, and I guess they think he looks kind of like a jock, so they made him the super dumb one.
He farts a lot.
Who farts as a weapon?
So much. Not even so much. It's a plot point in like 2 episodes, but like it's his thing.
It's his weapon. No, like, they get special things about their vehicles. Axel has flames on his vehicle, so he's the leader. Snap, he's a van, so like there's some weird thing about like he's kinda, I don't know, like the most. What was his thing?
He could throw hubcaps. He could throw hubcaps.
The hubcaps. At Nuke, his weapon was farting because he was a tow truck, not towing.
He had a hook.
He had a hook and crane, and his weapon was farting. And then Rev was just straight up a fire truck, meaning should have clearly been the most powerful because, again, like a Lincoln convertible, just a van, a blue hippie van, a green tow truck, and then a fire truck. The most practical.
Yeah, by far should be the most powerful.
And she's got a water gun. And then, okay. So they drink gasoline. That's the whole motivation. The reason Dracula is evil is because he steals gasoline. That's it. That's it.
Yeah, it's not...
Because Dracula, he kills people, he takes people under his thrall, he like controls, manipulates, and is generally bad to people. But Dracula, he only hurts vehicles when he's like trying to get away from the people stopping him. Like, so otherwise he would just be stealing gas. And he oftentimes tries not to steal gas from vehicles. He just tries to take gas. So like his only crime is that he's hungry and doesn't have money or a way to get money.
Yeah, they just need to go and like have a conversation with him. Like, listen, man, you're new to our planet, but like we can give you fuel if you like, I don't know, perform some service for us, and we'll be like all good. And you're
Like,
all powerful, pretty much. So like we'll
just be chill and we'll give you fuel. Just like ask for it. I'm sure people will give you fuel for free.
yeah, you're of
Like be like just have people come and visit you and be like, "Oh, if you want to meet with Dracula, all you got to do is bring some gas and you can have a conversation with this sentient vehicle."
yeah.
People would do that.
Scientists would be like, we need to figure out what's going on with this, the first new sentient species we have met. We should
That is
keep him
capable of
alive.
converting any vehicle into sentience.
Which, real quick, he does like in two. Why doesn't he just convert all of the cars? Why doesn't he convert all of them?
That is a question I have had this entire time of just like, okay, so in one episode, you get a super tank and you make him alive and he becomes General Motor. And then he just gets a bunch of other tanks. Okay, just keep going.
Yeah, just keep doing it.
Just get a lot more vehicles. Just keep on and you're good. And then in another episode, the one with the weird airbags, he just his big evil plan is, I'm just gonna convert a bunch of vehicles.
And it works pretty well.
And yeah.
So just do more, Dracula.
Just keep on doing that. Or you could even do the thing you did with Alucard and just build some. Cause like you can do that. Just keep going.
John.
And also, they build a machine that can turn like organic life forms into fuel. And then they built it, it gets blown up, and they don't just build another one?
Yeah. Yeah. Was that the last episode? The one in which they it was episode 13, I'm pretty sure. So they don't
uncool fuel, yep.
They don't have the chance to do it again. But like I'm sure had the show continued, like every other plot they've had, they'd be like, oh well, that didn't work.
Because the swarm storm, all you have to do is like get a ton of tiny vehicles. Oh boy, so many of these things. Revel Without a Car was episode 11 was the one where they just had an army and they just could have kept going.
John,
Yes.
I think this is a prequel to Cars, and I want to discuss how, because that's what our show's about. That's how we're justifying doing this, mostly.
Time for a not very fun fact of the day.
Oh yeah, sure.
Walter Emmanuel Jones, the original Black Ranger, he's missing a finger.
Oh.
I say not very fun fact just because like he's missing a finger, and I assume that's something that would probably bother him, but
yeah,
but hey, he's missing a finger. It's also interesting, and also he's very capable without that one finger, so like
yeah, it certainly doesn't define it, but I wouldn't call it fun, but yeah, you got it.
Like that's the thing. I wouldn't call it a fun fact.
It's a fact.
Hey, Lucas, remember how I got Bulk Skulled? That still is just one of the best things ever, man.
Oh, how the actors who played the villains from Power Rangers, or not the villains, the bullies from Power Rangers bullied you at Lexington Comic-Con a few years ago?
Yeah. See, I call it Bulk Sculling because they didn't bully me so much as they did exactly what their characters would have done in a way that once I realized it was them, I was so happy that they did. And it was the best, because I was walking behind someone, they quickly jump over a wet floor sign that I didn't see, and then I trip over that sign, and then all of a sudden, two jerks are just laughing at me, like, in the most, like, showy, obnoxious way possible. Then I look back, and I see Bulk and Skull, and I'm just like, oh, this is the best day of my life. And it was so good.
It's true. I was there.
It was so good.
I was dressed like Kid Flash. Or maybe I wasn't. I don't know which day that was.
Cars prequel.
Yes. So, in in a few episodes, we have an episode on space. I know this because, I don't know, it's hard to have a good recording schedule, so we've already recorded that episode. But in that episode, we theorize that since we see some beings that are like UFOs, basically, flying saucers, that are also sentient, that not only are all the beings on Earth carified in the Cars verse, but across the universe they are, and that it's potentially spread by some sort of planet to planet virus. I think the Van-pires comet is how that happens.
It is a targeted virus that is spreading this disease throughout the galaxy, throughout the universe. And it has just reached Earth in Van-pires, and season 2 of Van-pires, Dracula wins.
Yeah.
That's it.
Like, the motivators are the failed rebellion, the failed human rebellion.
Which, don't know how they fail. Dracula seems to be very incapable. And they seem to be very good at defeating him, even though they never, like, try to do anything beyond preventing it. So yeah,
it tracks. It spreads like a virus. It can make cars come to life, and I imagine, of course, the Van-pires look nothing like the cars, but you know who sort of a little bit looks like the cars, in that he's just a vehicle with eyes?
The other cars?
You're right. It's Grease Spot. The car, the tricycle.
But also Gypsy, who is just a taxi.
And their whole thing is they don't fight. They don't need combat capabilities. So in peace times, maybe these Van-pires go back down into a normal car form.
Maybe.
And I don't know. I think all the humans in the world
get converted to fuel.
Were ground into fuel, which is, again, they successfully put a rat in the machine and murder a rat and turn it into specifically high octane fuel.
The other theory where Dracula doesn't win is, of course, all of the humans in the entire world get fused with cars.
Yes. I was going to say, even if Dracula doesn't win, we have car-human fusion in this show. We have examples of it. And the meteor doesn't, like, explode. It's kept in a weird underground cavern that the Van-pires control.
And it keeps working.
So, I don't know, scientists could go study it.
It keeps on working because it works on the bones or fossilized bones or fossils or whatever that was of a T-Rex. And you know what happens to that T-Rex?
It gets sunk to the bottom of the ocean at the end of the episode. Is that what you're referring to?
No, I'm referring to the fact that for some reason, this T-Rex, as it just goes about its day in the junkyard, starts becoming a robot. Like,
it becomes
mechanical parts just start flying and adding itself to it. So, like, that could be what happens. Like, it could be this strange thing where the motivators don't know it yet, but they're going to eventually just be technology one day, because it slowly turns you into just the car or whatever it is, and that's going to happen to the entire world.
Yeah, so even if you're not in a car when exposed to it, if you get exposed to it, you slowly start transforming. So yeah, I think this is it even lines up with a few things we have said in the past about this, like aspects of it. I'll leave the one that I'm sure you want to say for you, because you were right about a thing. But I'm almost certain we talk about in, like, the food episode or the fossil fuels episode, how maybe they keep farms of humans that they use to eat or, I don't know, do something with. And if that's the case, they could be doing that to, you know, convert them into fuel. Maybe they got human farms somewhere that they're grinding into fuel. And I'll let you say the thing that you're very excited about.
I'm hoping it's the thing that I'm thinking about. But so in this future in which the human race has been converted to cars, not Van-pires, just being cars, For some reason, the comet's curse no longer affects them during the daytime, and they're just going about their days. The cars, the motivators, have defeated Dracula at this point. Dracula's done for. You know who sticks around? Because I can think of some vampires that stick around. Because in the very last episode of the show, Dracula makes some motorcycles into vampires. So
he certainly does.
So this entire world, this entire world has cars, it's got planes, it's got boats, and it's got motorcycles. And you know what these motorcycles are? The last remaining vestiges of Dracula's track pack. They're vampires. And they're roaming the streets just at night, spooking the kids, draining the fuel. We got vampire motorcycles.
If we haven't released the motorcycles episode yet, which I think we actually will have, again, I'm very confused about where all of our episodes are falling at this point. John does theorize that motorcycles are the vampires of the Cars verse, and man, there were in fact motorcycle vampires in this television show.
Absolutely. And I don't think they gave them faces.
They didn't. They just
gave them like strange decals on the side, and that was it. Oh boy.
Yeah, they certainly did.
All right.
So yeah, this is a prequel to Cars.
This is a prequel to Cars. Lucas's theory that some alien disease is being spread throughout the cosmos, it seems to be confirmed. My theory that motorcycles are the vampires of this universe, that also is very possible now.
Are equally sound theories.
Very, very true. Boy. Confirmed.
I have just one more thing I want to say about this bad show.
Go for it.
If you want to watch this show, one way a person could do it is if all of the episodes were uploaded to YouTube. I'm not saying that's the way we did it, but if they were on there, and they are on there, we watched them on YouTube, okay? There would be someone with the username Van-pires who commented on one of the episode 3 years ago, and I will admit this is quite possibly an intentionally weird comment or an intentionally like trolly comment. I couldn't tell you. It probably is, but I'm choosing to believe that it's not. He commented, "I really like the animation in this episode. It's smooth and fluid, at least for the time, and reminds me of my old pet cat, Bowselbull. I loved that cat. Rip in peace. You will be missed."
Rip in peace and peace.
Yep, it does in fact say R.I.P. in peace. I didn't just make that up. So, I don't know. I don't know if you have anything else to say about vampires, but I feel like that's a pretty good place to leave it.
I have about 1,000 things I could still say about vampires, but I think I've just been muttering for the past 2 hours, so I think it's probably best to leave it there.
Yeah. It's a bad show. Watch it if you want. I don't know. It's a insight into what television was in the late 90s, at the very least.
Oh, it's so much. All right, which brings me to my question from Liz.
Oh, shoot, I didn't have one. I'm glad you remembered. John's married to a woman named Lizzie. I'm dating a woman named Liz. They ask us questions. You get it.
What are the vampire car's weaknesses? Garlic? Specific fuel types? How do you kill a vampire car? Stake to the heart? Crowbar to the engine?
Solid. Okay. Well, we've listed a few. Specifically, the sun and the rain.
The sun, the rain, but also I don't think we saw a single vampire die other than Alucard.
Yeah, and I like some of like the tertiary vampires that like Dracula, like the unnamed army cars that he makes and the unnamed weird airbag army that he makes, like die, I guess.
But the airbag army comes back.
The airbag army does come back, but I think the like army vehicles do technically die from just getting,
blown to smithereens. I think they were just all blown up.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And then Alucard, do you remember how he was killed? Because it was weird.
I don't, actually.
Dear old dad tears what I can only think of as like a rib off of him, and then he just dies. He just like,
Oh.
oh no, I'm dying. Oh, friends. And that's it.
Yeah.
Because like they Rev wants to stay behind to save him, and they're like, no, you gotta go. And then he's just like, oh, friends, I'm dying.
Yeah.
Oh no.
The rest of the motivators are like, no, we literally met this thing 15 minutes ago. We're going to leave. They don't do a good
This
job.
thing has
of making
tried
him
to
a
kill
friend.
us more than it has done anything else. And then they end the episode with Rev saying, you don't forget a friend like him. And then a 3-minute montage of friendship, none of which was with Alucard.
None of which includes Alucard, and most of which were from future moments in the show that we had no context for. But anyway, back.
So weird.
One other weakness I do want to point out is there was like I can't remember what they're called. The things that you like use on tires that are shaped in like a cross.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That tool, it's shaped like a cross, and at one point Van Helsing, I apologize, gets kidnapped by the vampires and he holds it up. And they do react as if it was like a crucifix being held up to like normal vampires. So I don't know. I guess I would assume that means they're also weak to all of like the various holy things that vampires are weak to in media, you know?
You say that, but
which is weird.
He tries to get married in an old church, which is hallowed ground, which means he wouldn't be able to.
Isn't there a thing like if it gets desecrated enough? I don't know. I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know enough about vampire lore to speak too much about this.
Who knows?
He does, in fact, try to get married in an old rundown church. You're right. That's a bit of a hole.
This isn't a weakness, but if you're turning into a vampire, you can be turned back by the power of friendship and regular car fuel, I guess.
Oh yeah, at one point Nuke does drink accidentally. Was it Dracula's fuel? It was bright blue.
Dracula said, "This is human fuel. This is vampire fuel." And then he just puts the vampire fuel in, which leads me to believe it was just gasoline. And then in his human form, Nuke drinks gasoline and gets really good at painting, and then becomes a bit of a jerk, goes on a weird sugar high crash through the junkyard, and then becomes Frankenstein's monster for a minute, and then he's fine.
Yeah, that was what they were going for. They call him Nukenstein, and then they just give him some normal, not Dracula tainted fuel. He's like, oh, I'm still a vampire, I guess, but the cool kind that the rest of the the cool kind I already was.
Are they vampires?
I think they are, because they can't go out in the sun. The rain hurts them like the other vampires. I think it's like Danny Phantom, you know?
He's a ghost and a human?
Yeah, he can transform in between them. They could transform into vampires, but they were also still human.
The vampires had fangs, and the not vampire motivators had plates over their mouths?
Maybe that was to not show their spooky fangs, to show they were good guys. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know, man.
This show
they did also require
weird.
Fuel.
They did, and they were thirsting for fuel. They must have fuel. He who controls the fuel shall rule. But also there were just regular cars that were just cars.
Yeah, cars.
Also, you could be inside of a vehicle when it transforms and the inside doesn't transform? That's just something that happens in this show. So that could lend something to squishy bit theory, I guess.
Yes, absolutely. Also, one only other thing that really I want to point out is that their fingers turn into car keys.
Yep.
When they want to transform. And also, I think just at will, if they want their fingers to be car keys, they just turn into them.
Which, when they are,
I don't know.
when they're in car form, they're not keys. They transform into keys, and then they say mission ignition, and then they transform into cars.
Mission ignition!
Without keys for fingers. So, for some reason, they have to just go through this weird middle stage of having one key finger, and then they become a car. / plane. / everything else.
They don't drive. That's what would have made it interesting. They're cars. Oh gosh, that bothers me so much.
They do drive, but they never show them driving. And then they're like weird bits where they're about to die because they're falling, and they could just like not worry because they can fly.
I honestly think the reason they didn't do it is because it's easier to animate flying because they're just moving across the screen, and the way they sort of like move on the ground is they basically roller skate on their wheel feet, which looked, I'm not going to say good, but like interesting at the very least. It was an interesting way to have a character move, and they didn't do it because they could just fly everywhere, and that's all they did.
I think that's
I don't
why
want to talk about this show anymore.
I think that's why they had the plates over their mouths too, so they didn't have to animate the mouth.
Oh yeah, because they talked a lot when they were cars. So yeah, it was a bad show. It was a bad show. I wouldn't recommend watching it, but watch it if you want.
Yeah, it's oh boy. If you do watch it, I think it's a lot more interesting if you watch it at like 1.5 to 1.75 speed.
I would also recommend watching it. If you're going to watch it in like a group setting where you can all sit around and like make jokes and make fun of it. Like watching it by yourself when you could be playing Fire Emblem 3 Houses and it's like just right there.
Yep.
It made me very upset that I was doing this instead of that.
There was a point in time in which I kept thinking to myself, I'm watching this show instead of doing anything else. I work 40 hours a week, and then I've got like a good 3 hours of like I could work on projects or play games outside of work before I get real tired, and I'm gonna be watching this show.
Yeah, that was exactly my thought process. Is I only have X amount of free time hours, and this is how I'm spending them. So yeah, do it in like a fun way, more fun than that. I don't want to talk about this anymore. Thank you so much for listening to our podcast. This is a cool thing that you did. I appreciate it. I'm sure John does too.
Yeah. Also, just a warning: don't make it a drinking game. You will die. You will die.
Especially if car puns. It's like one more last reference to Batman and Robin. It's like Mr. Freeze ice puns turned up a little, and that's saying something.
Not even like a little. It's every single line of dialogue, I'm pretty sure. There's one pun per sentence for every of the motivators.
Yeah, also Van Helsing ends every sentence with amigos, but I literally have to stop talking about this. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening.
Follow us on stuff.
Everything, Twitter, please email us with any corrections, anything you want to say. Tell us if you watched the show, and we will send back an apology.
Yeah, we'll commiserate. We'll apologize. Our Twitter is @thekachat. Our email is thekachat@gmail.com.
All right. Until next time, remember to float like a Cadillac
and sting like a Beamer.
Pew, 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 pew.
Good Halloween Spooktacluar.
Tiny robot armies take